So it's time for this new installment. It's an installment on the topic of chaos and order. And I'm sorry it's taken so long. It's July, it's the holidays. I've been traveling to Italy and enjoying myself. And we also had an amazing Reclaim Your Inner Throne annual convention in the Norwegian mountains. So my focus has been elsewhere. But I have been thinking quite a lot about this video that I wanted to make for you, because it's a topic that intrigues me immensely. So I want to deal with this topic in two ways. I want to deal with it from more of a historical, mythological, meta level. And then I also want to do it in a way that makes sense in our personal lives. Chaos, this force, traditionally in world history, in psychology and religion, has been related to the feminine, to nature, to the unconscious. And so we can see in the creation myths of the world that the world seems to always arise out of the void, whether it's the Gingungagap in Norse mythology, or the void that everything comes out of in Greek mythology, and this black bird Nyx lays the egg and Eros rises out, and you get form out of the void. And obviously the Christian creation myth is that God just creates something out of nothing. It tends to be the way it is. And this nothingness, this night, this unconscious, this unknown, has always been associated with the feminine. And you could see that, for instance, if ever you were to go into the woods at night and find yourself a lake and go for a swim alone at night in a lake, you will have a particular kind of feeling that may wisen you up to why this is so. This is like an experiential imprint that you can be seeking out if you like. There is a sense of presence. There may be a sense of something is below me that could come and pull me down. At one point I did this in a lake, and I was in the middle of the lake at night, nobody else around, and all of a sudden these vines or whatever, leaves or whatever, they started weaving themselves around my legs and they started pulling me, and I got freaked out. So this is the kind of chaotic undertow that the creation myths describe, that we emerge out of. So humanity emerges out of the void, the dark. And civilization is really a collective project of defining order in a world of chaos. So we agree on concepts, we agree on right and wrongs, we agree on borders, on yeses and nos, morality, and so on and so forth. And so it's all about separating out of this nothingness a world of form and concepts and small, concrete objects that we can relate to on a conceptual level. Without this, there is no civilization. And so really, for most of humanity's history, civilization was still a fairly fragile place. We didn't have a lot of guarantees for our own survival through the winter, shall we say, so we became increasingly competent at growing food and surviving, but there was always a bit of a harsh edge to life up until very recent times. And so what does that really mean? It means that chaos always lurks at the periphery of our consciousness. And so in these more, shall we say, patriarchal early days of human civilization, the project was to create order at any cost, like hanging on from the skin of our teeth. Annihilation, death, always lurking at the periphery of our psyche. In these early days, when our civilization was completely occupied with creating order, creating safety, and so on and so forth, This feminine unconscious chaos dimension was sacrificed in a way for us to create a functioning civilization. And obviously there are many tragedies that have resulted from this. If you look at these two forces, the masculine and the feminine, or shall we say right and left politically, it becomes very interesting to see how these polarities actually play out in your life. Because the thing that tends to happen with polarities until we reach a certain level of maturity is that we tend to identify with just one of them, and then we send the other one into exile. So maybe I identify as a left-leaning politician, and then obviously I just completely exile all of the values that the right stand for. Generally, if you look at, for instance, border control, the right will have way firmer borders, and they would want to have firmer borders psychologically as well, and they would want to have a very much more defined idea of the in-group, the more clear morality, and so on and so forth. And so if I'm all the way out on the left politically, like I deconstruct morals, I open the borders, I don't want there to be any rules anymore, everything is subjective, and so on and so forth. Which is dangerous, because life is not meant to be played in just one of the polarities, fascism or communism, Nazism, or it doesn't turn out particularly well. So one of the projects that we're faced with is finding how is it that these forces can be balanced in our lives. So this is where we're going to get to the more personal part. So I don't know you and what you struggle with, but it could be essentially along one of two dimensionalities. It could be that you are stuck in a routine. Everything is just boring. You know exactly what's going to happen when you get up in the morning. Everything is planned out. You go to the same job, you do the same thing. Everything is neatly mapped into, Excel spreadsheets, and, life is a bit of a burden, a bit of a rote, robotic existence. So if you're one of these people, you will definitely be very disciplined, you would sit down and get your work done, and you would probably have a fairly stable personal economy, because you need to have a nose to the grindstone mentality to get shit done, and so on and so forth. And so this would be that you're very orderly in your life. And orderly in the extreme tends to be rigid, and in the very pathological extreme it can become tyrannical, in the sense that I tell you what to do, because I want absolute order. So the rules become so strong that you can't deviate from that standard one bit before I come down on you hard. And then on the left, it's more like, oh, whoa, I don't know where I put my stuff. My place is a mess. I keep forgetting to pay bills, and maybe I don't even have the money to pay bills, but I'm excited by life. I'm creative. I run around the world and have heart-opening spiritual experiences, and so on and so forth. Then I'm more on the chaos side of things. Being a liberal is associated with having openness to new experience, which is an intrinsic part of creativity. It means that I'm willing to travel the world, I'm open to new people, and so on and so forth. So maybe this is your problem. You have a hard time paying bills, say. If that is your problem, have a look at your flat. Does it look like a mess? Do you excessively want to follow the flow? Are you very liberal with your timekeeping? You come a bit like when you feel like. Everything is a little bit nebulous. You don't want to make clear commitments, and so on and so forth. You're not going to have access to money. Very unlikely. In a very small minority of cases, you might. but it tends to be that money is given to people who are more on the orderly end of the spectrum, which means people that work hard in a strategic way consistently over time. Maybe in your life at times you go through these periods, or maybe you haven't had one yet, and maybe you're preparing to enter something like that, because it seems to be very commonplace in the world right now to head into this dark night of the soul, or a period of chronic illness, or of losing your job or quitting your job without knowing what comes next. All that you know is that the predictability of the life that you have is killing you, and you have lost all of your creativity, and everything is just one goddamn day after another. And so at one point you surrender to the forces of chaos. Like that undertow in the lake that I spoke of, you get pulled under. And for the ego, it is terrifying. It is a very frightening place, because ego is, in a way, humanity's feeble attempt at creating order in the face of chaos. And this is why, it's important to recognize the importance of a healthy ego, because if we don't have it, life is only chaos, and we will be very prone to psychopathology, where there is no inherent structure to our psyche. This is a very dangerous place to be, which is why postmodernism, for instance, is like terrifyingly scary, because it destroys all psychological structures, and in the end there is no actual psychological cohesive self that a human being can use to navigate the world and protect himself or herself from direct assault by archetypal forces. So we become exposed to what I call archetypal possession. And this is a very scary thing. It is in the meeting between chaos and order that we can find the exquisite balance between structure, predictability, and creative emergence, and the deconstructive capacities of chaos and the void, But we want to keep this in exquisite balance at all times, a bit like the yin and the yang, it moves, and chaos is inherent in order, and vice versa. It's really, I would say, one of the primordial challenges and mysteries of human life, to find a dance between these two. Why is it that the liberal left is now pumping so much chaos energy into the world? Why is it that every definition, every truth, every border is just being torn down? It is precisely because civilization has now become so orderly, so structured, that it's safe to do so. In a sense, the orderliness of human civilization has succeeded, shall we say, the patriarchy has succeeded so well in providing what it wanted to provide that it's now safe. There is now an opening for these chaos forces to come really into the world in a big new way. And so that is partly coming from, I would say, an evolutionary emergent, like there's some new energy, some new awakening in humanity that wants to come through, just like when a person is put through his own initiation through chaos. But there's also like a darkness, a kind of a vengefulness for like all of the years that we were kept, restrained by all the structure and the borders. And this is true, it's actually true, but if we don't at the same time acknowledge all of the gifts that this orderliness brought, then we get very unbalanced and we get into big shadow. So this is one of the tricks that we are faced with right now. One of the challenges is to find an appreciation of the order that was, and also realize that we need to go through some chaos in order to find a new, more enlightened sense of order, and I see that happening quite a bit in the world already, so I'm optimistic. So that's all I have for now on this topic of order and chaos. If you have any questions, please put them down below. I may speak more about this later. I love this topic. Hope it was helpful, and hope that you can use some of this in your own personal lives. Finally, I have one message before we end this video, that in the last video I made about high stages of human development, I was speaking a bit about coral as a stage of consciousness, and I was mentioning my friend Alanya Forsberg. And she was very clear after this video that I made that she did not want to be described in any such way as I did in that video, where it was like becoming God or being the Godhead in action. And so I said she had the balls, you know, to do this. So essentially I gave her male genitalia. So I got into a bit of trouble for that. So I'm sorry for that, Alanya. You can be brave and have courage without being a man, for sure. And also what you said to me is very important. Obviously it's not about identifying as the Godhead or the archetype, but becoming more of a channel for it, stepping aside with my own contractions and allowing something higher to come through.